Hello guys, if you're new to my channel, I'm gonna leave the link on my body types playlist down below. So today we're gonna talk about, do double types exist? Because I can see some confusion in the comments. Some people say that I'm two types. I am gamine and natural, for example. But I'm curious to know why, because sometimes the description is I'm small like a gamine, but I have some musculature, so I'm like a gamine natural, which you probably is just flamboyant gamine, you know, because flamboyant gamine is small, slightly straightish, and has some musculature defined and broadly angular. All that is pretty much balanced, and you always have a tendency to this or that type. There's always a tendency, but you can only be one identity. You can't be two. Of course, you can bring different elements to your outfit that would reflect your personal vibe, your personal aesthetic that nobody else has. Even nobody else of your category type has. You can bring your own aesthetic in there. Because some time ago I did this video about if body and face don't match. That happens sometimes. There's sometimes elongated women with baby face, for example, which is very interesting combination. There are many of them like that. And then you try to marry that and you say she has a face of a soft gamine and then the body of a flamboyant natural. Soft gamine face probably is bringing some kind of a fairy tale to her, some kind of a special character, a certain vibe and certain aesthetic. And of course, if they can bring some interesting fairy tale-ish elements to their look, it's gonna look amazing. But then they also have that vertical line that if they treat it a certain way, then it looks a certain way. And if they don't treat it that way, then it looks different. It just depends on what exactly you want to show or express. Maybe you want to make it look a certain way, you know? It's always closer to one type or another type. It's always a certain yin-yang balance. It's certain that you're closer to one type than another, so most of the recommendation of this type is going to work on you. It just depends on your knowledge in fashion in general, maybe a little bit in history of fashion, just to know more about what's eye-pleasing nowadays to wear, and just not to look too costumish, not to look too clownish, wearing too vintage stuff. Yeah, just to mix and match and just to see how it works. Also, I think when people say that they're double types, I think they forget one important thing. This whole situation is not about the types. It's not for the sake of the body types. It's not for the sake of categorizing you or giving you a certain name. I just think it's more like David Kibi is a stylist, yeah? So he created that book in the 80s, and then he based his technology on McJimsey, who also said about yin and yang balance in the bodies and how it's all proportionate and stuff. So it's not new. These people who observe many women, they can definitely see some similarities. They want to explain you, so you would also start having a vision. But how he can explain you if there are loads of women in our world and they're all very different? So in order to explain something, in order to give the information to somebody, to give you a tool, we sometimes have to have categories. Then to see differences within the type, which is also very important because every woman has still her own vibe within one type. But it's still a tendency. But I also agree that sometimes it is harder to say. And then he had to have a names for that, so people would memorize that, and names should preferably match the aesthetic of a person and her body. And then he made a test, like another attempt to communicate that, so people would understand that. Some people say, like Nicole Kidman, for example, very interesting example, because after surgeries she has a bit more classic face. Before surgeries she has more natural face, but after surgeries she has a bit more moderate facial features structure. By Kibi, she's closest to flamboyant natural type, not classic, because she just simply too elongated. We talked about it on my channel loads of times. So she does have narrower rib cage. Other flamboyant naturals, they have normally wider rib cage, wider shoulder area, and she has narrower shoulder area, narrower rib cage, and more classic face. So some people say she's kind of like a two types, double types. She's like classic flamboyant natural. No, she's flamboyant natural still. But then the features that she has, they're not as prominent probably as in other flamboyant natural types. And probably she can add a little bit of classic lines to her look, but still it can be too stiff for her. But of course, every person is choosing what is best on herself, but then the way how she can balance that to marry her whole look and just look at all together, this is by Flamboyant Natural lines. It doesn't mean that she all has to be like super boho with loads of layers, tousled hair and very... It's not about that. Probably some people just have this misconception about that. Yeah, it's just some of that has in recommendations, but you just make it work for yourself. If you're not as broad as other types of your category, then you're just not as broad as other types of your category. That's it. So in a certain kinds of clothes, you won't look as broad. So in something very contrasted to that broadness, that won't be as much of a contrast, of a visual contrast with your bone structure. If we compare you to other woman who is of the same type, but she has a little bit more prominent bone structure. And actually this subject I'm going to open more in continuing my style review series of the stars. Remember, soon we're going to talk about more modern style examples, which is even more interesting because we have paparazzi now. So we can really observe how these people look outside on the streets. You know, that is more interesting for me than red carpet situation. It's a different thing. We can see the type of a person, of course. Then we can see what is different with other types. We can see what her proportions are and why it is different from other bodies of her type, right? The basic is this. The aesthetic is very much this. And so if we go back to Nicole Kidman for a second, yes, if she gets something a little bit more chiseled for herself, it's not gonna work a lot as a contrast with her bone structure if we compare her to another woman with similar situation, you know? If we compare her to Cindy Crawford has wider rib cage and wider shoulders. So if Cindy Crawford is going to wear something chiseled, same as Nicole Kidman, Nicole's angularity probably will not show as a contrast as much as Cindy Crawford's. Cindy Crawford will look a little bit more wide in that as a contrast. And that's all it's happening. So for example, if you think that you're one of the types, that also can be not as prominent in your case. Let's say everything shows you that you're natural type, but you're not as broad as other naturals, for example. That also can happen. Then this particular characteristic is just not very pronounced in your case. It's a little bit calm already. So you can vary and just say what and how things look on you based on that you know it's not as prominent. So one person can lean to a dramatic type more than another person, but they're both dramatics. Selena Gomez also is a very interesting example because some years ago she was in David Kibi's list, and then I realized that he didn't type her, or he retyped her, or he said she's not natural. But I've seen somewhere in the internet several years ago that he thinks she is natural, and I could understand why, besides of her really baby face, and she does look quite delicate if we compare her to flamboyant naturals, for example. But then she within herself, what she would be, she has elongated arms and legs, she has bigger body. So some people are really confused because with her face, with her kind of cuteness, she's closer to a soft gamine. But then with her elongation, and some people even say that she's flamboyant natural, which also can be, you know. I just didn't look at that. As I understand, David Kibi himself, he didn't categorize her yet, so I don't know. She's definitely leaning to one type more than another, but it doesn't mean that she can't dress up more in other types' aesthetic. It's just when she is dressing up in her own lines, everything kind of gets all together and she can pull that off. For example, soft gamines, they can't pull off long vertical line. They look very strange in that. She can actually pull off vertical and proportionately. So that is already another thing, you know? So we just need to see. Maybe I'll make some videos also what this celebrity's body type is from my viewpoint, if you want that. It's gonna be like a parlor game. Like David Kibi says, it's like pointless and useless to type celebrities. On the other hand, to me it's super interesting because that gives me knowledge and data and another training of my eyes, vision, observation. And what I just don't like about it is when people start arguing, no, it's not that type and it's not the type, start arguing with David and like why he put her in this category. She has wide hips, why he put her in this category, because many people still think with just one part of their body what their attention is sticking. They think with this just one part. They think that if she has bigger boobs, oh, then she's romantic for sure. But it's just practice. It's just practice and more knowledge, and then you will start seeing the difference. And the goal here is you start seeing the difference between other bodies, and you start seeing the vibes and aesthetics, different kinds of aesthetics. So if you start seeing that, it will be much easier for you. You don't even need to name the type, name your type or other people's type. It's just for a game, you know, for the sake of a game. Okay, I found my type. But it's not even that necessary if you already see what looks great on you or what doesn't, you know? If you already know, like, why would you try to find your type? Finding your type is just a help for you. Help to find yourself, find where you want to be, who you want to be, how you want to look, and finding your signature look. So yeah, that's a little video that I just wanted to show you that double types just don't exist by Kibi. Just continue in my Kibi series. That's it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Subscribe on my Pinterest for 13 boards as an inspiration for the body types. Also, you can subscribe on my Instagram. All the links I'm gonna leave down below. Also, you can become my sponsor or subscribe on my Patreon for some exclusive videos, some early access to these videos, and just if you want to support me and my channel. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.